Today in this session, I want to go into more depth on step number 4 in the 4 steps to accomplishing the first X. Step number 4 is eliminate debt. And this is really critical to you on your wealth building journey, is to understand the importance of what I call eliminate consumer debt. And you and I have to take the right steps in order to be able to do that. And so as we talk about that, let me begin this session with the story of 2 people. And I just want to show you this. Person number 1 earns $54,000 a year. They've lived in their home. He has lived in his home for 5.5 years. He's paid off all their debts, including their mortgage, cars, and credit cards in 6 years, which we're going to show you how to do in detail in this video. He invested $2,500 a month he'd been wasting on debt payments. And then 24 and a half years later, he will own his own home, have no debts, and have $3,200,000 in investments. That's based on a 10% average annual return. Now we have person number 2, who also earns $54,000 a year, and he has lived in his home for 5.5 years, same time, but he's continued creating and paying on debts as before. He pays his mortgage out over decades using standard payments. 24 and a half years later, he will own his home, still have car, credit card, and other debts, and have practically nothing in investments. What this really shows you when we talk about the story of 2 people here, it shows you that each one of them had the same money basically coming into their life, but how they used that money, how they were able to apply that money, and in this case to debt. And so in step number 4, as I want to go into greater detail here with this step, we're going to show you how to get out of debt in more detail in 5 to 7 years, and that even includes your mortgage on your home. Not only your cars, not only your credit cards and other debt you may have, but also your mortgage. And most people can do this. Now, not everyone that's watching it may take you 10 years, but most people, the majority of people that are watching this video can do this somewhere between 5 and 7 years. And so one of the things as we get started about getting out of debt, this person number 1 actually ended up with his home paid for, his cars paid for, and he had no debt, and he had $3,200,000 in cash in his investments. Person number 2 made the exact same amount of money as person number 1, but what he did with his money and how he applied it was different, so that when in 24 and a half years, he ended up with his house paid off by continuing to follow the mortgage. However, he still had debts, and he did not have any cash, or he didn't have, for example, the $3,200,000. So this is a dramatic story on the difference, and it shows you the power that debt has to actually eat up our wealth. So one of the challenges we have in America, I realize today I have people from all over the world that are watching these videos, but I want to give this the context. In most Western nations today, we are taught how to be consumers. And really, if we look at the word consume, the word, if you divide it up, it really means to destroy. And what it's destroying when we consume, it means to destroy our wealth. And so one of the things that's really important that we need to learn is how to use our money wisely, and how to, when I begin to talk about the laws of wealth in the second X, I'm going to give you some real specific steps and laws that you can take, that you can use not only just to get out of debt like we showed you person number 1, but also then how to invest to even create a higher rate of return than what we showed you with person number 1 that ended up with the $3,200,000. But the first thing we have to start with is we have to get out of a consumer mentality where we are wasting are misapplying the funds that come into our life. And so one of the first things that I want to say is how we spend money should truly reflect what matters to us. And that's one of the first things that you have to know. And today, as we talk about this in a kingdom mindset, or what some of you would call a biblical mindset, that how we spend money should truly reflect what matters to us. It's not about keeping up with the Joneses, or it's not about something that we think we should have. It should matter to us. In other words, I believe that the things that really matter to us, and we should have the right priorities in our life, but the things that really matter to us, it's good to spend money on those. For example, you need home, food, shelter. You need things in your life, but also there may be some wants as well. But most people don't do that. They don't really take the time to realize what they're spending money on or why they're spending it the way they are. So I'm just making this simple statement here on the slide that how we spend money should truly reflect what matters to us. Now let's go back here to the word consume for a minute. And just remember, I mentioned to you, the word consume means to destroy. And so the question is, what are we destroying? And really, from Deuteronomy chapter 8, remember, the Bible says, remember the Lord your God, for it's He that gives you the power to produce wealth, right? That He may establish His covenant. And so what are we destroying? What we destroy when we continue to build and snowball the wrong direction, the snowball increases. For example, it's going the wrong way in our debt, and our debt grows. What it does is it destroys our power to actually get wealth. Now, let's give you some practical illustrations here. And here's an example, a $2,000 TV purchase with a credit card. So if you were to go somewhere to an electronic store and purchase one of the new flat screens TVs, and I realize many of them cost much more than $2,000, but let's just start here with this one. And you purchase it with a credit card. It'll take 31 years and 2 months to pay off the balance, making the minimum payment. So if you make just the minimum payment on that one $2,000 purchase, think about it now, 31 years and 2 months to just pay it off, and you'll pay a total of $10,202 in payment. So that $2,000 TV is not only worth less when you go out of the store immediately, but in addition to this, if you put it on your credit card, $10,200 in payments, and that's $8,202 in interest alone, and that's at 19.8% interest. And may I say, in Western nations, many credit cards have a 5 or 6% interest rate higher than the 19.8. There's something like 24.8%. There are some that are higher than that as well. And so, but here's the real question. If you were to do that, put it on a credit card and only make the minimum payment, the real question is, what do you think the TV will look like after 31 years? So the idea is, some of these big old analog TVs we used to have, today we actually call them boat anchors. They're so heavy and so bulky because everything has gone to a flat screen. So this is just an illustration of how we may think wrong about how money actually works in our life. And it also allows us to understand how debt actually destroys our power to get wealth. And that's so important for us to understand that. Then here's an example just on a mortgage. And so if you had a $375,000 mortgage, and you had a 30-year mortgage at 6% fixed interest rate, you'll pay $809,000, $393 in total payments, and that's $434,393 in interest alone. So just in interest, you're paying more than what the house originally cost you on a 30-year mortgage. And so if you look here at this graph that I have here on this slide, actually the principal comes out, as you can see, to 52% of what you're paying is only principal. 48% It's the way what we call an amortization schedule, and it's the way that amortization schedule is actually put together. And so this is a normal one. There's nothing. This is what we would call a boilerplate amortization schedule, and basically you are paying 48% of your payments are actually interest. So that's why it's important that we understand how debt can actually destroy wealth in our life. And so as we start talking about this, I want to talk about how you position yourself to eliminate consumer debt altogether. And we're going to give you several examples here that will really help you. So Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 3 says this, and I believe this is in what we call the Living Bible translation. And it says, any enterprise is built by wise planning, becomes strong through common sense, and profits wonderfully by keeping abreast of the facts. Now think about that. Any enterprise is built by wise planning, which means by wise planning, we mean you're thinking through it. You're thinking about, okay, what is my approach going to be, for example, how to get out of debt, or what's my approach going to be on not getting into debt? And then it says it becomes strong through common sense. That's what we're going to give you here today in this session, is things that have to do with common sense, that steps you can take. And then you've got to keep abreast of the facts. It says it profits wonderfully by keeping abreast of the facts. That's the reason we're going to give you the illustrations that we're showing you. So now I'm going to give you the steps to actually, and give you some illustrations that'll help you on how to eliminate consumer debt. So the first one is cut up all but one card. And we say that, and I want to say this when we talk about cutting up all but one card. You do not want to cancel your credit. So don't cancel your cards. Don't cancel the credit line you have. Keep it open. Keep the account open. Do not close it. Okay? Do not close the account. However, you stop using the accounts and you cut up all but one card. Okay? Don't cancel. Don't close the accounts. Keep them open. So that's important to know. And in this illustration and these steps we're going to give you is you cut up all but one card. But what you do with that one card is you put it in a coffee can and put it in water. Fill that metal coffee can up with water, and then put your credit card in there and freeze it. Put it in the freezer. I've got a picture here of a refrigerator. Put it in the freezer and freeze it. So the reason we say that is because if you feel like you need to spend money on something, you're not going to be able to use it. Just like if you go to the mall, you're not going to have it with you. It's going to be in the freezer, in the coffee can. And if something comes up and you really have to use it, you need to use it for some reason, not because you want to, but you have to, then you can let it thaw out, right? And you can get the card and use it. But you need to take the credit cards out of your hand to use daily, especially if you're in debt here. It's important to know the difference. So step number one is cut up all but one card. That one card, put it in the freezer, freeze it in the coffee can. And then step number two is pay off the current charges every month. So in other words, if you are going to charge something on something, like you have that one credit card, the one thing I will say is you got to pay off those charges every month. Or my advice, as I said here in the first one, is just stop using it altogether. So the whole idea is you've got to stop the bleeding. And so that's what we're trying to tell you here now. And we understand for some people, right, because we get feedback from these teachings, some people say, well, the way I operate today and everything is on debit cards and credit cards, I need to have something to operate with. And that's fine as long as you're going to pay off the charges, right, at the end of every month. But most people who have a problem but with getting in debt on credit cards or any kind of consumer debt, they just need to stop using it completely altogether. Now, here's where it really starts, is that then what you want to do here in the next step is make the minimum payment on all your debts. So you just look at what the credit cards and the different statements say, and we're going to give you examples of this, of what the minimum payment. Go ahead and make the minimum payment on all of your debts. Make sure you're paying them on time, and make sure you're making the minimum payment. But then you want to begin with the debt that can be paid off the quickest using the minimum monthly payment. Now, I want to make sure that you're following me here in this next step, is that you want to begin with the debt that can be paid off the quickest using the minimum monthly payment. Now, what I always have to note, and is what I say on this next slide, is that you must begin with the debt that can be paid off in the shortest number of months, not the one with the highest interest rate. Most people will say, oh, well, it makes sense financially to go pay off the one that's the highest in interest rate. No. The debt snowball that we're going to teach you will work for you more effectively, and you'll pay less in interest overall if you'll start with the debt that can be paid off the quickest using the minimum monthly payment, not the one with the highest interest rate. And that's a critical thing to know. And then here's an example of this where we're talking about how you do this. So let's begin here. You're going to take all of your debts and you're going to list them. So here I have a mortgage, for example, at 6%, right? And they don't owe a lot on their house. But if they made the minimum payment, it would take 154 months to pay it off. I have a car that they owe. Their balance is $7,800. Their minimum payment is $522.65. And it was going to take them 14 months at the minimum payment to be able to pay this off. Car number 2, they owe $21,500. Their payment is $457.12. It'll take 47 months if they were just to make the minimum payment. Credit card number 1 is $2,250 at $55.60 a month. It would take 40 months. That's a long time to pay that off. And then remember, the interest on those credit cards is high. Credit card number 2, if you owed only $1,850 at $37 a month, it'd take you 50 months to pay off. And your home equity line that you have on your house at, let's say, $18,700, the minimum payment is $272.66. It'll take you 68 months. So if we were going to list our debts like this, then you want to go in this example with car number 1, for example, because you can pay it off in 14 months. Now, we're going to show you how you can accelerate this, and we're going to show you how you can increase the roll, the debt snowball. When it starts going downhill, you'll start picking up steam, and you're going to be able to pay off debt a lot quicker than you realize you can. But right now, we're going to start with, we're not going to start with the one that has the highest interest rate. We're going to start with the one that can be paid off with the lowest, for example, in the lowest number of months, just using the minimum payment. So if we start there, then we're going to go to this next step, and that is determining your winning percentage. Now, in this illustration, we're going to say that you can find an extra 10% a month of your income. Now, for many of you, 10% would be too large. You may have to start with 5%, or you may have to start with 2%. So, and in some cases, some of you are going to write in and say, I don't have any. So we're going to talk about how you can find 10%. And in other words, we're going to take this 10% and we're going to add that to that minimum payment that you can pay off this one, car number 1, in 14 months. We're going to add to the minimum payment this extra 10%. And we're going to talk about some ideas, for example, of finding this 10%, right? So what kind of ideas can we use to be able to find the 10%? Well, here's just a couple of them I'm giving you. Not many, but this will get you started. Is there anything that you can sell? In other words, do you have things you can sell? And basically, with all the different social media out there and the ways to sell things today, it's easier now to sell things than it ever was before. And then so first thing is, what can I sell? Number 2, what expenses can I reduce or eliminate from my daily life, right? This is not just debt. This has to do with what you're spending money on monthly in your budget, you know? So the idea would be, if it's eliminating that cup of coffee a day, at Starbucks, or if it's something else you're doing on your cable bill, other things, what can I eliminate to actually give me more money? And then number 3 would be, how can I actually earn extra money? Is there today in the gig economy, it's not that difficult to actually earn extra money and take that extra money and be able to come up with that much a month to be able to apply to your winning percentage. And that's the idea. The idea is that you come up with that, and then you have your winning percentage. Then you apply your winning percentage to the debt that can be paid off the quickest. So you apply your winning percentage to the debt that can be paid off the quickest. So here's card number 1 again. And so I'm going to show this to you. Your winning percentage based on the 54, I just did it here on $540 a month is what I established as the winning percentage, which is, that's pretty aggressive for many of you, but we're just going to use this number at $540. We add this up, that brings us to $1,062.65. So let me just say this. I'm using 10% here, kind of in that context. That's actually a little bit more than 10% of your annual income. So you can go back and say, okay, I'm only going to take 5% of my annual income, or I'm only going to take 2% of my annual income. In this case, this 540 is that 10% and a little bit more that we've put in there. But if you'll just go with 10%, then it'll be $540. Your new accelerated payment will actually be $1,062.65, and the number of new months will be 7 months, not 14, 7 months with that winning percentage to be able to pay this off. And the old number of months, of course, was 14. So the whole idea is that you just determine, and it's up to you to determine what your percentage, what your winning percentage is going to be. So you can pick in. I mean, I've had people who watched these videos and followed our teachings. I had one family that, I mean, they got aggressive and they got up to about 20%. And I don't know exactly how they did it, but they sold some stuff. They cut their budgets on some stuff. They felt like they were wasting money on things, and they started applying. It was amazing. They were out of debt on everything in less than 5 years when they started doing that. So the point is, this works, right? And so this works. So in this example, you're actually going to pay this car off in 7 months instead of in 14. Now, so what do? Well, once this car number 1 is paid off, you apply the total amount you were paying on the first debt now to the second debt in that order. And so if you'll do it in the order, so you make the list first of all of your debts and which ones can be paid off. Just list them in order, okay? Number 1, I can pay this one off with the minimum payment, number 1. I can do this one with number 2. Number 2, it's second. The shortest number of months, it's next. And so I'm going to show this to you. I'm going to take all these debts and show you now how fast they can be paid off by applying this. And so here's car number 1. We were going to be able to pay it off now with the winning percentage in 7 months. But remember, your winning percentage is going to grow, right? Because now you're able to take all of that money you were paying on car number 1 to accelerate the payoff of the debt. Now you're going to take the actual minimum payment of credit card number 1 and apply it to your entire payment you were able to use on car number 1. And that's going to bring you to $1,118.25. That means you can pay this one off in 2 months. Now you're going to be able to take that amount plus the minimum payment and apply it to car number 2, and you're going to now be able to pay car number 2 off in 14 months. Then we're going to go to credit card number 2, and you're going to take that accelerated payment, and of course you're going to be able to pay that now off in less than 2 months, right? And then your home equity line of credit, you're going to be able to pay that off in 10 months. And then think about this, your mortgage that you owed, $139,000 on your mortgage, you're able to pay that off in 49 months. So if you combine all those payments, right, that you're going to make, that's 84 months. It means you're completely out of debt, including your mortgage, in 7 years. So this is what we call the debt snowball. So you're taking the original payment you started with, adding it to the next debt once you pay it off. then you're going to take that money and what are you going to do with that $1,062 that you had there on this first debt you're paying off a month? This $1,060, you're going to add it to the next minimum payment. In this case was credit card number 1. You're going to pay that off in 2 months, and you're going to take that amount and add it all together, add it to card number 2's minimum payment, and you're going to pay it off in 14 months. And then it just continues on. It snowballs in order to actually get you completely out of debt. So as you do that, one of the things that I want to say here is that you apply your vastly increased winning percentage. Really, the secret sauce now is, what do you do with $2,784? What do you do with that every month? Well, instead of spending it or instead of wasting it, you start applying it to assets, to accumulating assets. An example of that is, you can now take that $2,784 and actually begin to put that aside. You can actually put it in a savings account or some type of money market brokerage account, and you can use it for different things. And we're going to talk about, when we teach on the second X, we're going to talk about different things you can use it on. But one example is, you can take that $2,700 a month, almost $2,800 a month, and you can start saving that and using that for a down payment on an investment piece of real estate that you can rent out and get monthly rent on. And now you've just taken that and rolled it over into an asset, in this case, real estate, as an example. Now, I want to be clear, that's not the only opportunity you're going to have to acquire assets, right? So the idea is you're going to accumulate assets here. And always remember, an asset is something that pays you either monthly, quarterly, or annually. Just so we're clear here, when Billy's using the term asset, I'm not using the term of something that only goes up in value. I'm using the term of something that goes up in value, but also either pays you monthly, quarterly, or annually. Now, it doesn't mean you have to spend the money that it's paying you, but you do have to understand that you want assets and make sure that assets are bringing you some kind of income, either monthly, quarterly, or annually. And so when you're accumulating these, you're moving in the process. You're beginning to build what we teach you as the second X. You're starting to go from the first X. Specifically, when you get out of debt, you go from the left side of the first X to the right side. And then when you start accumulating these assets, you're starting to move from the right side of the first X to the left side of the second X. And you're on your journey now to actually growing wealth. And you've moved away from operating as a consumer, just a consumer. And now you're moving into actually being a wealth builder in your life. And so when we talk about acquiring assets, one of the things is learn to keep updated financial statements. Now, we've already covered what the difference between an asset and a liability is, but your net worth that we're going to talk about on Playing the Net Worth Game, remember, is you subtract your liabilities from your assets, and that actually creates, right, your net worth. And so when we talk about playing the net worth game, it's a matter of seeing your net worth continue to increase, right, to improve and to get better. And actually you're building your net worth over a period of time by taking this additional funds you have and being able to invest it in assets. Here's the good news, and the assets will pay you as well. So here it is. Your net worth game is you acquire assets that are worth more than you paid for them. That's what I love to do with real estate, is identify pieces of real estate that I can actually buy for less than they're actually worth. I always say this, in real estate, you make money when you buy, not when you sell, right? So you've got to make a good buy. However, playing the net worth game can be in all kinds of assets, and I'm going to give you a list a little later on the kind of assets that I really want to encourage you to focus on. And I'm going to give you, if I have time here, I'm going to give you just a quick slide to let you know what I'm thinking. And then number two, you can not only acquire those assets, but you can also create assets that have market value. And so acquiring would be something like buying real estate, or oil and gas leases, something like that. Creating assets would be something like starting your own business or your own company and building it up so that it's actually worth something. And so here's just a quick list. I'm going to give you the list in a whole lot more detail and when we start teaching again in this series on the second X, but you can do this with businesses, starting businesses or purchasing businesses, investing in real estate, stocks and bonds, intellectual property. So there's ways that you can start applying this winning percentage to positioning you in order to be able to grow and to build wealth. And so I appreciate you watching this video. Here we've given you the steps to be able to eliminate debt in your life, and consumer debt especially, and all debt, including your mortgage here, in 5 to 7 years. And so we'll see you right back here on another video.